The detective cleared my 15-year-old son in just 3 days. But by then, millions of people had already watched him walk through his high school in handcuffs. My name is Merritt Halstead, and the person who helped make that happen wasn't a stranger. She was my own sister. She thought sacrificing my son would save hers because she believed no one would ever question the evidence. She was wrong. What started with one fake file ended with a school board investigation, a collapsed family reputation, and a secret my sister never imagined would survive inside her own laptop. Chapter 1. The day they walked my son out in handcuffs. The sound I remember most clearly is not my son crying. It is the click of metal closing around his wrists. When I stepped into Principal Elaine Mercer's office at Ashford Ridge High School, Nolan was sitting in a plastic chair with his hands cuffed in front of him. He was 15 years old, but in that moment, he looked much younger. His face was pale, his eyes were red, and the sleeve of his gray hoodie had twisted around one shoulder as if someone had pulled him backward. Red marks were already forming around his wrists. Officer Daniel Ruiz stood beside him. Detective Lena Ortiz was near Elaine's desk, studying printed screenshots and a folder the school had prepared. Elaine looked at me only once before lowering her eyes. I moved toward Nolan. Officer Ruiz lifted one hand. "Please stay there, ma'am." Nolan looked at me as if he had been holding his breath until I arrived. "Mom, I didn't do this." I wanted to cross the room, put my arms around him, and tell every adult there to get away from my child. Instead, I stopped. My heart was pounding so hard that I could feel it behind my eyes. But losing control would not get Nolan out of that chair. Is my son under arrest, or is he being detained? Detective Ortiz answered. He is being detained while we verify evidence connected to unauthorized access of the school district's network. Have formal charges been filed? Not at this time. What exactly is he accused of doing? Elaine finally spoke. Someone entered the district system last night, downloaded final exam answer files, accessed the grade management area, changed 2 student records, and deleted part of the application log. Nolan shook his head. That account isn't mine. It looks like mine, but it isn't. His voice broke before he could explain further. Elaine said an answer file had been found in Nolan's cloud account. A username almost identical to his had also appeared in the preliminary data. I looked at Detective Ortiz. No one asks him another question until he has proper representation and I am present. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. That was when I saw my sister through the glass wall. Celeste Whitaker stood in the hallway, wearing a navy dress and pearl earrings, as if she had come directly from one of the Ashford Education Alliance events she organized. Her hair was perfect. Her posture was relaxed. She did not look surprised to see her nephew in handcuffs. Celeste was 43, 3 years older than me, and had spent most of our adult lives treating composure like proof of moral superiority. She entered the office slowly and touched my elbow. Everyone is doing what needs to be done to protect the students and the district. I pulled my arm away. Why are you here? Preston heard about the breach. He wanted to make sure the school took it seriously. Her husband, Preston Whitaker, was an elected member of the Ashford County School Board. Their son Bennett was 17, attended Ashford Ridge, and was part of the same technology program as Nolan. Elaine shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Whitaker called several times this morning. He believed the matter should be referred to law enforcement immediately. Preston could not order the police to arrest anyone, but he could pressure a principal who knew he had influence over budgets, contracts, and public meetings. Before Elaine's staff had fully verified the data, the matter had already been pushed into a criminal investigation. Officer Ruiz asked Nolan to stand. Nolan flinched when the officer touched his shoulder and stepped backward. "Can my mom come with me?" "I'll follow you," I said. Officer Ruiz decided to keep the cuffs on while moving him to the vehicle. He said it was to prevent the situation from escalating. The closest exit ran through the main hallway. The bell rang as we stepped outside the office. Classroom doors opened. Students filled the corridor. Conversations stopped one by one as Nolan walked past them with his hands restrained. Then the phones appeared. Someone whispered, "Hacker." Another student said he had changed grades. Nolan's friend Abby Chen stood near the lockers. She did not record him. She only stared, one hand pressed against her mouth. Nolan saw her and lowered his head. He tugged his sleeves over the cuffs as far as they would go. I walked behind him, close enough to see every step, but not close enough to touch him. Celeste stood near the exit. "If he cooperates," she said quietly, "this can be resolved quickly." The words sounded less like reassurance than a warning. Nolan spent the next 4 hours in the juvenile interview area at the Ashford County Police Department. I called an attorney I knew through Harbor Point Dental Group, where I worked as an operations coordinator. He did not handle civil rights cases, but he gave me 4 instructions. Do not let Nolan answer more questions without counsel. Do not sign a prepared statement. Ask for written documentation of his detention status. Save every message, email, and document. Detective Ortiz told me Nolan had not been charged. The police were still reviewing the digital evidence provided by the school. Just after 4 in the afternoon, they released him into my custody. "The investigation is continuing," Detective Ortiz said. Nolan did not speak during the drive home. His phone kept vibrating. The video of him being walked through the hallway had reached the student group chats and then a parents' forum. One post called him the Ashford Hacker. He powered off the phone and pulled his sleeves over the red marks on his wrists. By the time we reached our small house in Brookfield, I had received an email saying Nolan could not return to school while disciplinary action was being reviewed. My manager at Harbor Point wanted to know whether I could work the next morning because the clinic was short-staffed. 2 of my evening bookkeeping clients emailed to ask whether Nolan or I had access to their financial records. In less than 1 day, an accusation had threatened my son's education, his reputation, and the income I used to support us. Celeste had always assumed I would endure things quietly. After I became a single mother in 2012, she gave Nolan an old laptop, then mentioned her generosity at every family dinner for years. When our mother became ill, I drove her to appointments and organized her medical bills, while Celeste attended fundraisers and was praised as the successful daughter. After our father died in 2023, I continued managing the records for the Blue Ridge cabin we inherited together. Celeste called it helping a little. The cabin was worth about $184,000. Each of us owned half. Celeste had tried several times to buy my share below market value. That evening, she called again. She said she could help me hire a strong attorney. She would give me $32,000 immediately if I transferred my half of the cabin to her. My share was worth close to $92,000. "Why do you already have this offer prepared?" "Because you need help now, Merritt. Don't let the pride of being a single mother destroy your chance to save Nolan." I did not agree. I saved the voicemail and took screenshots of her messages. Later, I found Nolan sitting in his dark bedroom. His laptop was closed. "I don't want to touch it," he said. "Everyone will think I'm doing something wrong." I sat beside him. "I believe you. But I need you to help me remember exactly what your computer was doing last night." Nolan had built a home network monitor for a cybersecurity project. It could not identify who attacked the school, but it recorded whether his devices were active. We checked the data. At 1:47 in the morning, when the school claimed Nolan's account entered the system, his laptop was powered down and sending no traffic. Then I checked the school email again. The answer file had appeared in Nolan's cloud account at 2:13, 13 minutes after the intrusion supposedly ended. Nolan stared at the timestamps. If I took the file, why did it show up in my account after whoever hacked the school had already left? I placed the timestamps beside Celeste's voicemail. I could not prove she had anything to do with the attack, but she had reached the school too quickly, prepared an offer for the cabin too quickly, and known too much about Nolan needing to cooperate. I found the number for Graham Voss, an attorney who handled civil rights and education cases. I sent him one message. My son was handcuffed because a file appeared in his account while his computer was turned off. I need someone who knows how to keep the rest of the evidence from disappearing. Chapter 2. The evidence they thought no one would check. Graham Voss called me at 7:15 the next morning. His voice was calm, precise, and entirely free of the false reassurance I had already heard from the school. He asked me to bring Nolan every email from Ashford Ridge High School, the screenshots from the cloud account, the network records, and anything Celeste had sent me. By 9, Nolan and I were sitting in the conference room at Voss and Calder's Civil Rights Law. Graham was 48, with silver beginning at his temples, and the kind of steady expression that made it clear he was listening to every word. He read my message again, then studied the timestamps Nolan and I had found. "This helps your son," he said. "It does not identify who did it." Nolan shifted beside me. "But it proves my computer was off. It proves the school's timeline may be wrong," Graham said. "That matters, but we cannot jump from a bad timeline to accusing someone else. First, we preserve what still exists." He explained that digital records could be overwritten, automatically deleted, or altered simply through normal use. Before anyone touched another device, he needed formal notices sent to every organization holding relevant data. While we sat there, he prepared preservation notices for Ashford County Public Schools, the Ashford County Police Department, the cloud provider, the company managing the district learning system, and the vendors responsible for firewall records and overnight backups. Then he looked directly at me. "Do not post your evidence online. Do not speak to reporters yet. Do not fight with your sister over the phone. If Celeste contacts you, keep it in writing whenever possible." I handed him my phone. She already left a voicemail about the cabin. Graham listened to Celeste offer me $32,000 for property worth almost 3 times that amount. His expression did not change, but he replayed one sentence. "Do not let the pride of being a single mother destroy your chance to save Nolan." He saved a copy. "This may not prove anything about the school breach," he said, "but it tells us how she behaves when she thinks you are under pressure." A few minutes later, Dr. Priya Shah arrived from Redwood Digital Forensics. Priya carried 2 sealed equipment cases and spoke to Nolan before she touched his laptop. She explained that she would create forensic copies of his devices, rather than simply opening files and browsing through them. The copies would preserve the original data and allow her to verify timestamps without changing anything. Nolan stared at the case. "Will you be able to read all my messages?" Priya paused. "Some personal data may appear during the examination. I will limit the review to what is relevant, and I will document what I access." Nolan looked at me. "The police looked at everything. The school looked at everything. Now everyone we hire gets to look too." There was anger in his voice, but underneath it was humiliation. I moved my chair closer. "You should not have to give strangers your entire life to prove you did not do something. It is unfair." "Then why does it matter anymore? Everyone already saw me in handcuffs." I wanted to promise the video would disappear and everyone would apologize. I could not. "The truth cannot erase that hallway," I said. "But it can stop that video from becoming the only version of who you are." Nolan looked away, but he let Priya take the laptop. While she worked, I handled everything else. I emailed my manager at Harbor Point Dental Group and requested emergency leave. I answered questions from my bookkeeping clients. I organized the school messages by time and sender. I printed the detention documentation. I created a list of every number that had called me since the arrest. I saved links to posts about Nolan before they could be deleted. Graham watched me place each item into a dated folder. "You do this often?" I told him I had spent years managing my parents' medical bills, insurance forms, and the paperwork for the Blue Ridge cabin. After my father died, I had continued tracking taxes, repairs, and ownership records. Celeste always called it helping a little. "That little habit may protect your son," Graham said. Before noon, Abby Chen sent me a message. She said she had seen the video spreading but had not recorded Nolan. She was making a list of the accounts that shared it. Then she sent screenshots from the robotics group chat. Weeks earlier, Bennett Whitaker had asked how lab passwords were reset. He had asked whether Nolan's files synchronized automatically. He had also asked if Nolan still shared a cloud folder with family members. None of the questions proved he had done anything, but together they no longer looked casual. Ms. Ruth Delaney contacted Graham soon afterward. She told him Nolan had never been given administrative access to the district system. The username connected to the intrusion differed from his actual account by one character. She also said Bennett had been seen in the computer lab outside scheduled hours. She had reported it. That report had not been included in the evidence packet given to Detective Ortiz. By mid-afternoon, Harbor Point told me I could keep my job, but I would need to work remotely until the situation was clarified. My coworkers donated paid leave so I would not lose the entire week. 2 bookkeeping clients terminated their contracts anyway. One parent called the dental office, asking why a woman connected to a suspected hacker was still allowed near patient records. I sat in Graham's conference room reading that message and finally understood why Celeste had chosen $32,000. She believed I would calculate how quickly everything could fall apart and decide that an unfair offer was better than having nothing. Instead of calling her, I forwarded her voicemail to Graham. A few minutes later, Celeste texted me. She said she had heard I hired an aggressive lawyer. She warned me not to turn a teenager's mistake into a public scandal that destroyed both families. I typed one question. Are you talking about Nolan's mistake or another child's? The message showed as read. Then Celeste deleted her text. I had already taken a screenshot. Graham studied it. It is not a confession, he said, but she seems to know there may be another teenager involved. Late that afternoon, Ashford County Public Schools sent us a temporary proposal. Nolan could move to online instruction while the investigation continued. The district would avoid further public comment. In exchange, we would agree not to discuss the case publicly. Graham placed the document in front of me. This is not a final settlement. They will say it protects Nolan's privacy. It protects them from having to see him, I said. Nolan was being offered a way to disappear from the school where he had been humiliated. I did not sign. Priya called us back into the room shortly before 6. Her initial examination confirmed that Nolan's laptop had not connected to the district system during the intrusion. The answer file had not existed on his hard drive before it appeared in the cloud. There was no record of him opening the grade system or editing student records. Someone had also created a separate account with a username nearly identical to Nolan's. That suggests impersonation, Priya said. It does not yet identify the person. The first cloud audit records had arrived. They showed that the answer file was uploaded into Nolan's folder through an old administrator account connected to the Blue Ridge Cabin document archive. Years earlier, Celeste and I had used that shared folder to store deeds, tax records, and repair invoices. Her access had never been removed. The upload came from a device named BW-laptop-17. Nolan leaned forward. Bennett names his devices with his initials. Priya raised a hand. Device names can be changed. We treat that as a lead, not a conclusion. More data arrived from the school district. Part of the application log had been deleted, but the firewall backup and overnight system archive still existed. The connection had originated from Crestview Estates, the neighborhood where Celeste and Preston lived. Bennett's student credentials appeared in the access chain. The 2 grades that had been changed belonged to Bennett. Both were low enough to threaten the grade point average required for his scholarship and conditional college acceptance. Priya said pressure could explain a motive. It did not excuse the act, and it still did not prove who had planted the file in Nolan's account. Detective Ortiz called Graham before the office closed. She said the investigation was no longer moving forward on the assumption that Nolan was the attacker. The evidence against him was being reevaluated. She did not clear him yet, but for the first time since the handcuffs closed, someone with authority had admitted the case against my son might be wrong. Priya continued examining the metadata. The false file had been created on BW-laptop-17 at 2:06 in the morning. It had been uploaded to Nolan's cloud folder 7 minutes later. The account used for the upload did not belong to Bennett. Priya turned her screen toward me. The administrator name was Celeste Whitaker. I stared at my sister's name in the audit log. Then I remembered what she had said outside the principal's office. Everyone is doing what needs to be done to protect the family. Only then did I understand that Celeste had never told me which family she meant. Chapter 3. Cleared in 3 days, but they wanted us to disappear. By Saturday morning, 3 days after Nolan had been walked through Ashford Ridge High School in handcuffs, I was sitting beside him in a conference room at the Ashford County Police Department. Graham sat across from Detective Lena Ortiz and an assistant Commonwealth's attorney. Priya had brought a concise report instead of the piles of screenshots and technical notes we had already reviewed. She did not repeat every log. She confirmed that Nolan's laptop had not participated in the intrusion. The username connected to the attack had been created to resemble his, and the answer file had been placed in his cloud account after the school system had already been breached. The data had been checked against multiple sources. It pointed to a device and internet connection associated with the Whitaker home. It also showed that Celeste's old administrator account had been used to upload the file into Nolan's folder. Priya folded her hands on the table. The physical devices still need to be examined before I can make final conclusions about who performed each action. But I found no technical basis for treating Nolan as the attacker. The assistant prosecutor looked through the report, then turned to Nolan. No criminal charges have been filed against you. Based on the evidence currently available, you are being removed as a suspect. For 3 days, I had imagined what that moment would feel like. I thought my knees might weaken. I thought I might cry or reach for Nolan and finally allow myself to breathe. Instead, Nolan stared at the paper Detective Ortiz placed in front of him. It confirmed that the investigation into him had ended, and that law enforcement was now examining other individuals and devices. He pulled one sleeve over his wrist, even though the red marks were almost gone. Does the video disappear now? No one answered immediately. Detective Ortiz's expression softened. No, I'm sorry. Nolan looked down. Being cleared on paper did not change what hundreds of students had seen. It did not remove the word hacker from the group chats. It did not make his body forget the sound of metal closing around his wrists. Graham explained to me in the hallway that the written confirmation was only one part of repairing the damage. No charges were filed, but administrative records do not erase themselves. We still need to address the detention record, the school discipline file, and any formal sealing or destruction process that applies. I nodded. I had learned not to confuse the first correct decision with the end of the problem. Detective Ortiz was already taking steps to examine Bennett's laptop and other devices connected to the Whitaker home. Celeste and Preston had received formal notices requiring them to preserve data. Bennett had been temporarily suspended from Ashford Ridge while the investigation continued. No one had contacted his university yet. Graham said any college action should come after the evidence and school disciplinary process were verified, not after rumors or a television report. That afternoon, Graham and I met with Dr. Marcus Bell, the superintendent of Ashford County Public Schools, and Principal Elaine Mercer. Nolan stayed home. He had spent enough time in rooms where adults discussed his life as if he were not present. Marcus began with the careful tone of someone who wanted to sound compassionate without admitting too much. Nolan's access to instruction will be restored immediately. We can arrange for him to transfer to another school in the district or continue online temporarily. The district is also prepared to cover several initial counseling sessions. Elaine placed a letter on the table. We would like to offer a private apology to Nolan and your family. I read the first paragraph. It referred to an unfortunate misunderstanding and a rapidly developing situation. It did not say Nolan had been falsely accused. It did not mention the handcuffs, the hallway, or the video. Will you correct the information sent to your staff and the parents who were told Nolan was under investigation? Marcus exchanged a glance with Elaine. We have to balance any public statement with student privacy obligations. I placed the letter back on the table. Where was that concern for privacy when my son was taken through a crowded hallway in handcuffs? Elaine's face tightened. That should not have happened the way it did. But it did. Marcus leaned forward. Our goal is to prevent additional harm. Then do not make Nolan disappear and call that protection. The room went quiet. I was not asking the district to publish Bennett's records or disclose details about another minor. I was asking them to correct what they had allowed people to believe about my son. I gave Marcus a list Graham and I had prepared. I wanted written confirmation that Nolan was not involved. I wanted his disciplinary file corrected. I wanted a limited notice stating that the information previously circulated about Nolan was inaccurate and that he was not facing charges or school discipline. I wanted the district to assist with removal requests for the video. I wanted counseling covered. I wanted an independent review of Preston's involvement and the decision to keep Nolan in handcuffs through the hallway. I wanted a written promise that Nolan would not face retaliation. Marcus read the list. These requests will take time. I spent 3 days proving my son was not a criminal. I can give you time to follow the law. I will not give you time to hide what happened. Later that evening, Abby came to our house with her mother. She stood just inside the doorway, twisting the strap of her backpack. I'm sorry I froze. Nolan sat at the end of the couch. You didn't record me. I should have done something. What were you supposed to do? Fight a police officer? Abby gave a small, embarrassed laugh, then handed me a list of usernames. They were the accounts that had shared or reposted the hallway video. Ms. Delaney had also sent Nolan a message. His place in robotics club would remain open for as long as he wanted it. Nolan read it twice. I don't know if I can go back. You do not have to decide today, I said. His first appointment with Dr. Simone Keller was the next morning. Nolan chose the chair that faced the office door. He answered most questions with 1 or 2 words. When someone in the hallway turned a metal lock, his shoulders jerked upward. Dr. Keller noticed. After the session, she spoke quietly with me. His nervous system has connected school, authority figures, and metallic sounds with danger. Being cleared does not erase that response. I had already seen it, but hearing a professional name it made the damage feel more permanent. That afternoon, Detective Ortiz called Graham. The physical examination of Bennett's laptop had begun. The device contained records showing that Bennett had accessed the school system, downloaded the answer file, and changed 2 grades. He admitted it. He also said Celeste discovered what he had done the next morning. According to Bennett, she told him to stay silent and promised she would handle the evidence. He denied uploading anything into Nolan's cloud account. He claimed he had not known Nolan would be handcuffed. Then Detective Ortiz asked what he did after seeing the video. Bennett admitted he said nothing. He watched his cousin being called a criminal and stayed quiet because he was afraid of losing his scholarship and conditional college acceptance. That evening, Celeste called me from a number I did not recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but Graham had told me written and recorded communication could matter. I answered and put the phone on speaker with my notes open. Bennett made a mistake, she said. You are letting Graham turn this into a witch hunt. Your mistake put my son in handcuffs. This could ruin Bennett's life, his acceptance, his scholarship, his future career. Preston's position is already under scrutiny. The foundation is getting calls. You have not asked me once how Nolan is. Silence. Then Celeste exhaled sharply. Nolan is smart. He will recover. Bennett has more to lose. The words were so calm that for a second I thought I had misunderstood them. What about Nolan's future? He still has time. He is only 15. And that made him easier to sacrifice? I did not say that. You did not have to. After the call ended, I wrote down every word and sent my notes to Graham. He called less than an hour later. The district had produced an internal email from Preston to Elaine, sent the morning Nolan was detained. Graham read the relevant lines aloud. Control the narrative before the school board meeting. Treat this as a serious criminal breach. Do not allow Bennett's name to appear until there is conclusive evidence. The email had been sent before the district finished assembling the evidence against Nolan. Preston had not ordered the police to arrest my son. We still had no proof that he knew Celeste had planted the file. But he had known Bennett might be involved. He had hidden that conflict. Then he had used his position to push the school toward Nolan before the facts were complete. 3 days had been enough to prove my son was not a criminal. What the Whitakers had done to put him in handcuffs was only beginning to come into view. Chapter 4. The perfect family couldn't control the story anymore. Graham told me the next stage would not be fast, no matter how badly I wanted it to be. We could not file a lawsuit that afternoon and expect the truth to arrange itself neatly around us. The preservation notices had to be completed. The district's responsibility had to be separated from Celeste's actions and Preston's interference. Graham needed Nolan's treatment records, documentation of my lost bookkeeping clients, and a formal notice of claim before any civil case could move forward. I need to know what you want from this, he said. I want them to stop acting as if clearing Nolan erased what they did to him. That is not the same as wanting revenge. No, I do not care whether Celeste loses her house. I care that no one gets to call this a misunderstanding and move on. Dr. Marcus Bell opened an independent review of the district's response. Principal Elaine Mercer admitted Preston had called her repeatedly that morning. He had pushed her to involve the police before the technical evidence was fully verified. She also admitted Ms. Delaney's earlier report about Bennett had not been included in the packet given to Detective Ortiz. Elaine had not planted evidence. Officer Daniel Ruiz had not decided Nolan was guilty. Marcus had not ordered anyone to walk my son through a crowded hallway. But each of them had made a choice that protected the institution before it protected a child. Elaine trusted the most powerful parent in the room. Ruiz followed procedure without recognizing that Nolan was panicking, not threatening anyone. Marcus tried to control the district's exposure before he addressed Nolan's humiliation. A system did not need every person inside it to be cruel. It only needed enough people willing to look away at the wrong moment. A reporter named Sophie Grant contacted Graham after the school board email became part of the official record. She covered education and public accountability for a regional television station. Graham agreed to speak with her only after reviewing exactly what could be shared. He gave her the written confirmation that Nolan had not been charged, the notice of the independent review, the public school board records, and Preston's email. Nothing from Bennett's private school file was released. Nothing from Nolan's therapy was discussed. Sophie asked whether I would speak on camera. I agreed on the condition that Nolan's identity be protected as much as possible. During the interview, she did not ask me whether Celeste was evil. She asked why a 15-year-old had been led through a hallway in handcuffs based on evidence that collapsed within 3 days. She asked why a school board member had intervened in a case involving his own son. She asked why Ms. Delaney's concerns about Bennett had disappeared from the original evidence packet. Those questions did more damage to the Whitakers' perfect image than any accusation I could have shouted. The report aired the following week. The hallway video appeared with Nolan's face blurred. Parents who had called him a criminal began deleting their posts. Some sent apologies. I did not make Nolan read them. He looked at the empty spaces where the posts had been and shook his head. They still believed it. I know. Deleting it does not mean they did not believe the worst thing about me. I know that too. The Ashford County School Board held an emergency meeting. Preston sat at the long table in a dark suit and said every action he had taken was meant to protect the district. The call records and email showed something else. He had known Bennett might be involved. He had failed to disclose that conflict. He had pressured Elaine to treat Nolan as the primary criminal threat before the evidence was complete. The board suspended him while the ethics investigation continued. He did not resign that night, but for the first time since I had known him, Preston could not decide how the room would describe him. Celeste began losing control somewhere else. Several major donors asked her to step away from the Ashford Education Alliance while the investigation continued. The cloud records in Bennett's statement made her a subject of inquiries into false reporting, evidence tampering, and interference with an investigation. She insisted she had never intended for Nolan to be handcuffed. She said she had only tried to protect Bennett. That defense revealed more than she understood. She still believed protecting her child required sacrificing mine. Bennett remained suspended from Ashford Ridge. The school began its formal disciplinary process. His university was notified through proper channels and placed his conditional admission and scholarship under review. He sent Nolan a short email. It said he was sorry things had gone too far. Nolan read it once. He did not say what he was sorry for. I looked at the screen. No. He did not say he watched the video. No. Nolan closed the message without replying. Through the legal documents, we learned that Preston had not known Celeste used the old cloud account to plant the file. When he discovered what she had done, their marriage began to fracture. Celeste blamed him for making Bennett believe one bad grade would destroy his life. Preston blamed her for turning Bennett's cheating into an operation that could destroy all of them. I felt no satisfaction hearing that. A family that had been willing to sacrifice Nolan was now sacrificing one another. Celeste's attorney sent another offer regarding the Blue Ridge cabin. This time, the amount was higher than $32,000, but still far below market value. The proposal also required me to agree that Celeste's voicemail could not be used in any future civil claim. I sent one answer through Graham. The cabin would be independently appraised. Either one of us could buy the other's share at the appraised value, or it would be sold on the open market. Celeste had spent years using our mother's request to keep the family together as a reason I should accept less. I was done confusing family unity with permanent surrender. Nolan tried returning to Ashford Ridge in late November. The counselor walked with him toward the robotics room. Abby and Ms. Delaney waited inside. Then, someone closed a metal locker. Nolan stopped. His entire body went rigid. He stood outside the room with one hand pressed against the wall, unable to take another step. Ms. Delaney came into the hallway, but she did not touch him. "You do not have to come inside today," she said. She handed him a small box of robotics components. "You can work on this wherever you feel safe." On the drive home, Nolan kept the box in his lap. "I want to transfer." I waited. "Not because I did anything wrong," he said, "and not because they chased me away. I want to choose where I go next." "Then we will find somewhere you choose." 6 weeks after the arrest, Celeste appeared at my front door. Her hair was pulled back carelessly. There was no makeup hiding the exhaustion around her eyes. She did not begin with an apology. "The media has taken this too far." I stayed in the doorway. "Preston is suspended. Bennett may lose college. Donors are leaving the foundation. The legal bills are already climbing." She looked past me as if she expected to see Nolan. "Tell Graham to stop preparing the claim." "Have you asked whether Nolan is sleeping?" Celeste blinked. Have you asked whether he can walk into school? Whether he can open his laptop without feeling sick? This is destroying my family. You came here to talk about what this is doing to you. You cannot honestly want to ruin us. I am not ruining you. I am refusing to protect you from the consequences. Her composure finally broke. I was trying to save Bennett. You told me Nolan would recover because Bennett had more to lose. I was scared. You decided my child was easier to sacrifice. Celeste's eyes filled with tears. Please, Merritt. I felt no triumph. She was not begging because she understood Nolan's pain. She was begging because the consequences had finally reached her own front door. You had 3 days to tell the truth before they cleared my son. You used all 3 to protect yourself. I closed the door and went back inside. A minute later, Graham called. Priya had completed the direct examination of Celeste's laptop. The browser still contained the authentication token for the old cloud administrator account. A copy of the answer file remained in a temporary folder. The metadata showed that the file had been opened, renamed, and uploaded into Nolan's account from Celeste's device. My work records from Harbor Point also showed I had been processing payroll at the exact time the cloud account was accessed. That evidence supported my alibi. But Celeste's laptop was the decisive piece. Graham said they now had enough to complete the notice of claim and prepare the lawsuit for January. After the call, I found Nolan at the kitchen table, assembling the robotics kit Ms. Delaney had given him. A police car passed outside. His shoulders tightened, but he did not close the laptop. For the first time in weeks, he kept working. That was when I understood that fighting back was not about watching Celeste lose control. It was about helping Nolan believe that his life still belonged to him. Chapter 5. The Life They Couldn't Take From Us. In January 2026, Graham filed the civil complaint. He did not announce a dramatic number to the press or promise that a jury would make us rich. The filing said what had happened in language that was difficult to soften. Ashford County Public Schools had rushed a criminal referral, failed to protect Nolan's privacy, ignored conflicting evidence, and allowed him to be paraded through a crowded hallway in handcuffs. Celeste had used an old cloud account to plant false evidence, then watched while the accusation spread. Preston had hidden his conflict of interest and used his position to steer attention away from Bennett before the facts were complete. What I asked for was not extravagant. I wanted Nolan's records corrected. I wanted treatment covered. I wanted compensation for the work I had lost and for the harm done to my son. I wanted a public acknowledgement that did not reveal another child's private records. I wanted policies changed so the next frightened teenager would not be treated like a dangerous adult because someone powerful wanted a quick answer. Most of all, I wanted a written promise that no one in the district would retaliate against Nolan for refusing to stay quiet. The legal process moved slowly after that. Bennett entered a juvenile diversion program. He admitted that he had accessed the district's system, downloaded the answer files, and changed his grades. The conditions required supervision, restitution, counseling, and restrictions on his access to certain computer systems. Ashford Ridge completed its disciplinary process. After reviewing the verified findings rather than the television coverage, Bennett's University withdrew his conditional acceptance and scholarship. He lost the opportunity he had tried to protect through dishonesty. Celeste reached a separate legal resolution connected to the false report and the evidence she had planted. She received probation, community service, and strict conditions preventing her from contacting Nolan or pressuring anyone on his behalf. She was permanently removed from leadership at the Ashford Education Alliance. For years, she had built her identity around helping children succeed. Now the same community knew she had tried to destroy one child's future to protect another. Preston's ethics investigation reached a narrower conclusion. There was no proof that he had planted the file or known exactly what Celeste had done. There was proof that he had concealed Bennett's possible involvement, failed to disclose his conflict, and pressured school officials to move against Nolan before the evidence was complete. He resigned from the Ashford County School Board and announced that he would not seek office again. Several clients left his law practice. His consequences matched what could be proven, not what anger alone might have demanded. The district also had to confront its own choices. Elaine received formal administrative discipline and completed mandatory training. Officer Ruiz was required to undergo additional instruction in de-escalation and the use of restraints with juveniles. Dr. Marcus Bell announced new district policies. School board members could no longer involve themselves in investigations connected to relatives. Digital evidence had to be reviewed independently before a student was referred for serious criminal action. Parents had to be notified more clearly. Students being removed from campus had to be taken through routes designed to protect their privacy whenever possible. The district sent a limited correction to staff and families. It stated that the earlier information concerning Nolan had been inaccurate, that he had not been charged or disciplined, and that the district was revising its procedures. It did not expose Bennett's private records. Sophie Grant updated her report after the investigations concluded. Some copies of the hallway video were removed after formal requests. Others remained online. That was one of the truths no settlement could change. Parents and students sent apology letters. I placed them in a box and let Nolan decide what to do with them. He read 2. He threw away 3 without opening them. I never asked him to forgive anyone for the comfort of the adults who had failed him. In September 2026, nearly 11 months after the day he was handcuffed, the civil case settled. The total value was about $640,000 before legal fees and other obligations. Part of it went into a managed education fund for Nolan. Part covered therapy and future care. Part compensated for lost work and legal expenses. Part gave us enough for a reasonable down payment on a new home. It was life-changing money, but it did not make us wealthy. I still worked at Harbor Point Dental Group. My manager admitted the clinic had reacted too cautiously when it asked me to work remotely. My coworkers had already shown me more loyalty than most of my relatives by donating paid leave when I needed it. The 2 bookkeeping clients who left never returned. Other clients eventually replaced them. I chose to reduce my evening work so I could spend more time with Nolan and sleep more than 5 hours a night. The Blue Ridge cabin was independently appraised at about $184,000. Celeste could no longer afford to buy my share at market value, so we sold it. Before handing over the keys, I went there one last time. Inside a cabinet, I found years of receipts I had paid, my mother's medication notes, records from the roof repairs, and folders of taxes and insurance forms I had organized. Celeste had called all of it helping a little. I found an album containing photographs of Nolan as a child and took it home. I did not destroy Celeste's belongings or remove anything that belonged to her. I simply collected what was mine and walked away. A building could hold memories. It could not force 2 people to remain family at any cost. Over the following months, the Whitakers sold their house in Crestview Estates and moved somewhere smaller. Legal fees had grown. Preston had lost clients. Celeste no longer had income or influence through the foundation. I did not monitor their decline for pleasure. Most of what I knew came from documents Graham needed for the case. The pattern was clear enough. Preston lost public authority because he had used that authority to hide a conflict. Celeste lost community trust because she had used that trust to frame a child. Bennett lost an opportunity because he had cheated to preserve it. Their consequences were not something I created. They were the final shape of their own decisions. Bennett sent Nolan another letter before we moved. This one was handwritten. He admitted everything. He wrote that he had entered the school system, changed the grades, and allowed Celeste to handle the evidence. He admitted that he had watched the video of Nolan in handcuffs and remained silent because he believed his college future mattered more than Nolan's safety. Nolan read the letter at the kitchen table. "Are you going to answer him?" I asked. "Maybe someday." He folded it carefully. "But only if I want to." "That is the only reason you should." Forgiveness was not a debt Nolan owed because Bennett was family. In October 2026, after the settlement was complete, we moved to Havenbrook, North Carolina. The house was modest. It had 2 bedrooms, a quiet yard, and a small extra room Nolan claimed for robotics before we had finished unpacking. We chose the town together. Nolan toured the new school, spoke with the counselor, and met the technology teacher before deciding to enroll. He continued therapy with Dr. Keller online. He's still startled at the sound of metal locking. He became tense when he saw a police officer near school. He refused to watch the hallway video. But he opened his laptop again. He joined the new robotics club. He stayed in touch with Abby and Ms. Delaney. He began building a small program that showed students when unfamiliar devices accessed their accounts. He was not using technology to prove that he was innocent anymore. He was using it because it still belonged to him. After the settlement, Celeste sent me an email. She quoted our mother's wish that we keep the family together. I waited several days before responding. I told her I would not prevent her from getting treatment or changing her life. I also told her I would never place Nolan back inside a relationship where he had once been considered acceptable collateral. Any future contact would have to respect his boundaries. No one would ask him to forgive her so the adults could feel better. I did not promise permanent estrangement. I simply refused to reopen a door because we shared blood. One afternoon in Havenbrook, I stood outside Nolan's robotics room. On his desk were 3 things: a half-built machine, Bennett's unanswered letter, the official document confirming that Nolan had never been responsible for the Ashford breach. One represented damage that had not completely disappeared. The other represented truth finally placed in the record. The machine represented what came next. For a long time, I thought victory would mean watching Celeste lose everything she valued. I was wrong. Victory was Nolan walking into his new school without lowering his head. It was me no longer asking my family for permission to protect my child. It was a powerful institution being forced to change the rules it had ignored. It was the truth surviving the reputation of people who thought they were important enough to replace it. "Mom," Nolan called from the room. "Come look at this." I stepped inside. The room was bright, his laptop was open, and his hands were steady over the workbench. I closed the door behind me, not because the past had never happened, because it no longer had the right to decide who we would become. Have you ever been asked to accept a private apology for harm that was done in public? Tell me where you would have drawn the line, and subscribe for more stories about women who stopped protecting other people from the consequences of their choices.